This episode is sponsored by Ronald Reagan, who ignored the AIDS crisis so hard that it gave him Alzheimer's. Womp womp.
Tell you what, I caught more fish today than I did in the 80s. And those were the Reagan years.
Cookies, dice, gravel, grit, jelly beans, or by its most commonly known nickname, Santa's ass dandruff, we are of course today talking about the Big C, crack. And yes, while we like to have fun on this channel, just a few moments ago after all, I said the word jelly bean, but drug use is seriously no laughing matter. If you need help, then please seek help. A lot of people care about you, a lot of people need you, I need you here, still alive, still watching my videos, and still trauma dumping in my comments section. That is my drug of choice, really, and it's the only thing that gets me through my day. So please, give me my fix. Go in the comments and tell me something horrible that happened to you, please, right now, do it! But much like the bucket mouth bass in this episode, I'm starting to get numb to all of your little trauma comments, and I need something stronger. I need something more pivotal, more provocative, more insane and crazy. Something like this.
Out of the sun came a Tojo Zero and put 50 bullets in my back. The blood attracted sharks. I had to give him 30.
So please, seriously, do not do drugs. Instead, do emotionally traumatic things to your houseplants or endure the shame of admitting that you're 30 years old now and have only ever seen The Phantom Menace and none of the other movies in that omnipresent and Skywalker-centric narrative, which has left you completely unable to relate to your peers and once caused a situation at a Halloween party where a friend's husband told you to voluntarily cease your own heartbeat because you never appreciated Jabba the Hutt's many folds as a child. But until that happens, we've got an episode to go over, so let's hop aboard the Titanium Falcon, or whatever it's called, and smuggle ourselves some freshness jars.
Nancy gave me some ginseng tea. She got it from John Redcorn.
Ginseng? I don't need to get all hopped up on dope.
The episode begins, as many of the greats do, at dawn, wrist deep in dirt and worms. Our little Frankenstein and Igor are here to pick out a few hand-dug American worms, readying their bait for an upcoming fishing trip.
Bait shop worms are factory farm worms. They keep them in little cages their whole lives. They never get to run around free. It's sad, really.
And I have to say, this may be one of the most serene openings of the entire series. Hank really takes the time to lay out, in downright poetic terms, why exactly he loves fishing. It gives him a sense of serenity. It is a time where he can let his worries melt away and instead focus on a singular goal, eventually catching and releasing a fish. It's the investment of time, the sense of order within nature, that really gets Hank into his happy place. And I know I praise the show a lot for stuff like this, but good God, the animation touches here are supreme. From the red cellophane that's around their flashlights to keep from disturbing the worms, to the comet streaking across the early morning sky as Hank says that he isn't worried about who's going to take care of Bobby when he and Peggy are old and incapacitated, it doesn't matter, because right here, in this moment, everything is at peace. Although this does disturb Bobby.
Who is gonna take care of me?
But gadzooks, gang, there's no time to talk about all that. Someone's trying to break into the mystery machine. Oh no! Thankfully, Hank makes full use of his plot armor and pulls a Barney Gumble, placing Mr. Car Thief under citizen's arrest. And because Hank is an adept carpenter, he shows up at the courthouse to put the final nail in this guy's coffin. He crucifies the poor bastard in front of his... Well, okay, what does Peggy call her?
I hope they lock that thief up and throw away the key.
That thief is my boyfriend.
Boyfriend?
Now, I will admit, I was originally going to title this video Hank versus the 8th Amendment, although maybe I'll put that in the thumbnail. I'm not really sure at the time of writing this. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But the reason why I wanted to do that is because of this judge, who makes some rather, to say the least, unconstitutional rulings.
For the next 3 months, I'm sentencing you to live in a truck.
What the?
If I send you to prison, they're just going to teach you how to be a better truck thief.
Okay, so while that would definitely violate the whole no cruel or unusual punishments clause of the US Constitution, I am perfectly happy to let this go because, remember, this is a comedy show, and I do get a lot of fun out of the idea of the car thief having to endure living in an import truck. Those things are really tiny, sheesh. Of course, this does raise a number of logistical questions, such as, is the truck outside in the Texas heat? Is it in a monitored garage? Is there a bathroom nearby? How much time per day does he need to spend inside the truck? Is he forbidden from sitting behind the wheel and making engine noises? Beep beep, you know, so many questions. But again, it's really good for a laugh and feels like an extremely Mike Judge kind of idea, a sort of slightly ajar perspective on America, which is so subtly off that you don't really realize that this whole thing is like sort of tilted unless you're actually looking for it. And in much the same way, when Hank goes to get his truck back from the court's impound lot, we discovered that the legal system has taken Hank's truck apart to check for drugs, but decided not to put it back together.
He was in my front seat. He didn't hide any drugs in my spark plugs.
Well, we know that now, Mr. Hill.
Of course, we could make the argument that they were simply going to charge Hank for the service of putting the truck back together, and instead he said, you know what, screw you guys, I'll do it myself. I know how to put my own truck back together, which then immediately translates to Luann will do it. Luann knows how to put the whole thing back together, and boy, does she. Look everyone, I was wrong! I'm so glad to be wrong. Cotton's first appearance in the show wasn't the death of Luann's interest in cars. She's wearing her adorable gearhead grubbies, and with her hair pulled back and all. Goodness, it's so good to see. What a great look for Luann. If this ends up being her final act as a car enthusiast, then I will be more than content, as this is the ultimate demonstration of her skills, putting Hank's entire truck back together herself, by herself. That is awesome. And as if to take a big victory lap around this whole thing, Luann even demonstrates her flexibility, all while wearing jeans and a belt, for God's sakes. How the hell does she do this?
I could put my feet up behind my head. Want me to show you?
Oh, no!
Horrified by his family, Hank takes his little rented hatchback, which is the kind of car I drive, beep beep, and heads out to the lake with his friends. And side note here, but I really like Dale's straight up brown shirt here. It is a very nice change from his usual white undershirt and button up. I love when the characters are shown changing their outfits depending on what activity they're up to. That is just, such a good touch. And hey, speaking of neat animation notes, I am very impressed by all the great shots we get of these fish. Seriously, somebody really did their homework on fish anatomy, which, you know, just takes me right back to high school. Did anybody else have to do like the whole identify the different parts of the salmon? Or is that just like a California thing? Did everyone have to do that? Let me know. But yes, the animation quality, it looks great. It looks wonderful, it looks very on point. This easily could have looked like a nuclear dumping site for fucked up freaks, but instead they turned it into this glistening paradise. Well, for some people that is. For those of us who forgot to bring sunscreen, it turns into a painful hell.
We're all meeting at the pharmacy to get aloe vera for Bill's back.
Disturbed by his lack of fishing success, Hank goes to the bait shop where the proprietor, Layaway Ray, is using apparently some sort of odorless gasoline on his failing business, which has been curb-stomped by the Megalomart. But seriously though, how does Hank not smell all that gasoline that he's putting everywhere? He's literally rubbing the counter with it, my god! Hey, anyway, isn't it sort of quaint and downright nostalgic that these were back in the days where Walmart was first starting to strangle mom and pop stores? That was the postmodern era, where the stores had all become one store, one location where you can get everything in one spot. And by the way, when I went to Alaska, there's this like giant chain store called Fred Meyer's that's apparently owned by Kroger, and it's like this giant like Walmart, Barnes & Noble, furniture store, all mushed together. It's insane. But now, right now, we are living in what's called the postmodern era, but I'm going to call dollar world, where the store exists everywhere that a Wi-Fi signal can be found. The store is no longer one location. The store is not a place you go to. The store is everywhere. The store is in your pocket. The promise of products and momentary fulfillment is just a few taps away. You carry the weight of dollar world on your hip, you universal gunslinger. Anyway, just before Mr. Layaway Ray blows up his own store for the insurance money, he tells Hank about a legendary figure who makes his own custom fishing bait, Jack, who is some sort of mountain man. Man, if I had a nickel for every time that a store got blown up in Season 2, I would have 2 nickels. But I would blow up all the stores in the world for a third. Whew. In any case, Ray's words send Hank off to a magical journey into Arlen's famous, quote, bad side of town, and they really hyped up the scope of Arlen in these early seasons. This town feels huge. I mean, hell, the park where Bobby and Hank were getting their worms was called Arlen City Park, so it seems to be a pretty substantial place. And look everyone, Arlen even has its own Jesse Pinkman, who is called over to Hank's car by this weirdly, slow and almost seductive finger roll. Ooh.
Hey, G. What do you want? What do you need? Looking to buy?
G.
Through a series of miscommunications and double talk, Hank makes the most generous drug deal in the history of the world.
You call it bait. I like that. What are you looking to spend?
Well, I got 20.
20 get you all the bait you need, Jack. Rock on.
I can only imagine what Mr. Pinkman thought when Hank said that he's usually, quote, a worm man. He must have been like, damn, this narc is a freak. And yet Mr. Not Jack takes a big risk and unloads a whole heap of crack for just 20 bucks. What a saint, what an economy. And he must be a saint because his funky like background beat, that theme music of his playing in the background there is sending me to heaven. I love it. It's like hearing a hip hop album dry hump a scratching record, but it's got like this great deep tone but remains cheesy all the same. Now armed with a CIA special, Hank takes his bait to the lake and, after a bit of pressuring from his friends, shares his ill-gotten gains to great effect. Oh, and because I see a little chance to be a pedantic jerk here, I think I'll take it. Excuse me, in the final episode, it shows that Boomhauer was actually a Texas Ranger the whole time, so why doesn't he recognize that Hank is using crack here, Well, personally, I think the answer is as simple as this. Boomhauer just never meant that much to the creators of the show. He was an empty vessel, a little mystery X factor to keep us on our toes. They clearly had no set plans from the start about what to do with him, so holding the show to any sort of continuity with Boomhauer would be a little unfair and, most importantly, a big waste of my time. Unless you're one of those people that thinks that Boomhauer was especially put on a Dale task force to keep him and his conspiracy theories under wraps, but instead allowed all the crimes they get up to go unpunished because, guess what, he didn't want to put his friends in jail. But personally, I think that the best and most logical way out of the whole Texas Ranger problem is to just say that, you know what, Boomhauer made himself a fake badge to impress women. It's just the right level of douchiness that he would do, and that is my headcanon. That badge at the end is not real. Irrelevant career theories aside, we get to see a bunch of weirdly cute fish in this episode, and observe that this lake they're in is much more of a pond, since it is shallow enough for Bill to stand in when he gets pushed out of the boat, but I don't want to make this political and open up the whole heated debate of lakes versus ponds. I think we've all had uncomfortable Thanksgiving discussions about that whole topic, so let's just leave that aside. Look, the key takeaway here is that Hank is so thrilled to be catching fish in massive numbers that he finds it difficult to concentrate on much else. He takes any opportunity he can find to get out to the lake, and even worse, he begins to hoard his remaining bait from his friends.
You just said you had a little left.
That's right, and then I used it up.
Don't lie to us, friend, because when you lie, you make an ass out of you and me.
Not one to be deterred by such petty things like a friend's privacy, Dale takes it upon himself to break into Hank's garage in search of the almighty and all-valuable bait. And how do the Hills react to this little bit of burglary?
You go check on Bobby. I'll see what's going on. You, drop that tackle box.
Ah, it's okay, Hank. It's me, Dale Gribble.
I said drop the box.
Whew, that is just one step above a chainsaw there. My goodness, lordy, that is intense. Now, some might say that it is a bit of a stretch to compare Hank's addiction to fishing with actual drug addictions, but beyond the physical symptoms, Hank's behavior is certainly in line with someone who is constantly thinking about their next fix. It becomes so disruptive that even the slightest thing can set him off, resulting in one of my favorite line deliveries of the whole show, and a quote that I will often use in my actual real life.
Can I have some more butter for my pancakes?
That's it. I'm going fishing.
But unlike most stories of addiction, this story begins to take something of a sad turn, because when Hank goes out to the lake, his little fishy friends reject his generous sprinkling of crack.
Where are you going? This ain't a worm. This is the good stuff.
Now look, I am no fishing expert. The closest I've gotten is enduring the fisherman quests in Terraria, but my inner skeptic does waggle his eyebrows a little bit at the idea that a fish would be able to eat crack like this and not completely wig out or just straight up die. If any ichthyologists want to get in here, then please let us know if this sort of thing is possible. Because if it is, then my plan to take over Iceland is all but certain. You hear that, Reykjavik? Soon your colorful rooftops will be mine. While I wait for my illegal annexation of the Bay of Smoke, Dale introduces us to the concept of diminishing returns and the eventual need for stronger substances to get the desired results.
Problem? They've gotten wise to it. Solution? You need something stronger. Cockroach 101.
Basically, if you kill most of the cockroaches with a poison, but a few live, those surviving roaches will then be able to withstand the poison, requiring even stronger poison to kill them off. I would say this is a very small example of evolution, but I am not 100% sure that Junie Harper actually bit the big bazooka in the last episode, so I'll keep things PC just for her. Dale's wisdom takes Hank back to his daddy dealer, where he, the dealer, and Dale get caught in the act. This is where, finally, the wool is lifted off of Hank's eyes and he realizes that he has been handling a Schedule II substance. Worse still, nobody believes his story of using the crack as bait. Not the judge, not Hank's lawyer, and not Peggy.
Don't lie to me, Hank. I am not stupid. I am a substitute teacher, not one of your drug-smoking friends.
Ouch. Alright, okay, I'll put my hands up here. Peggy definitely goes a little overboard here and sells Hank down the river in a heartbeat, but I actually kind of like this gag. Whenever she calls Hank out like this, it's usually for the most outrageous stuff ever, and if anyone on the planet is not gonna do this stuff, it is her boring ass husband who just wants to cut grass and do the quote, same old with Peg for decades on end, which I'm sorry Peggy, is just missionary style and grass and BC headache powder, not blasting ass or doing crack. I don't know what you think Hank's doing over there, but it's not what you think. And I really appreciate these jokes because Peggy should know that Hank would never do this kind of crazy stuff, but the outrageousness of her willingness to believe that he's secretly a dope fiend or a porn addict or something always gets a laugh out of me, because it's so silly and it's so like toothless for me to get mad about. She's just so flustered and angry, and I don't know, it gets me every time. But unfortunately, Hank isn't able to take all of this in stride and gets rather upset when his lawyer discusses a potential solution to his legal problems.
Were you abused as a child?
What? No!
Are you sure?
I'll help you with your dishes.
Mom? Mom, what should I do? Mom?
Better Ball Paul does little to help in the court, but what I find interesting is that John Redcorn actually takes the time out of his day to show up for Dale's hearing, which goes just about as well as you would expect.
Gag him.
Hank presents his argument to the judge, who then makes this like extremely strange ruling of allowing Hank to prove his story rather than just ordering a drug test to see if Hank was actually ingesting the crack. The whole back half of this plot really depends on this sort of like childlike view of the legal system where just crazy stories are given the opportunity to shine in wacky scenarios. But you know what? I'm actually okay with this. And why am I okay with this? Well, because in a nutshell, I am happier going along with it rather than fighting it or making big posts online about how stupid it is. The secret is that King of the Hill gets away with a lot of stuff like this because it is just so gosh darn likable. I cannot motivate my bitter heart into tearing it down. And hey look, Boomhauer's brother is bringing in Layaway Ray for burning down his business and trying to claim insurance fraud. That's a nice little touch, nice little callback to earlier in the episode. Out on the lake, it seems that Hank's crazy story is actually corroborated when Dale actually manages to catch a fish. Huzzah!
Gribble? Just fish is frozen.
I caught it. That's my position.
Ah, damn. With the ecosystem changed forever and the fish not biting, it seems that Hank and Dale are indeed going to prison forever, but hey, at least to get one last look at what I would say is the most beautiful evening day ever depicted on the show. In a final attempt at behaving like a real fisherman, Hank chooses to use a last lonely worm on his final cast. And this cast is so powerful, so profound, that nature itself begins to bend to his will.
Oh, fuck, no, I love propane.
I mean, just look at this. The sky changes from a late afternoon to a clear blue vista. If this isn't a sign of Hank's divine fishing skills, then I don't know what is. And after going through hell and admitting to Dale that using special bait was in fact cheating, meaning that he was on the same moral level as the guy who tried to steal his truck, Hank is cleansed of his crimes and the world is brought back to equilibrium by a certain small and very humble fish.
She ain't pretty, but she's a bass, all right. You're free to go.
She's the most beautiful fish I ever caught, I tell you what.
And with that, the episode comes to a photo finish, showing off the goofy side of the judicial branch of the government, and it's an ending, I suppose. Okay, so the thing about this episode is that I feel it is pretty much all done in service to a singular joke, that being Hank is using crack as bait. That is the main thesis and pretty much what everything else is revolving around. There is no B-plot at all. It is just Hank wandering from weird situation to weird situation, and then in the third act alone, he quickly has to untangle himself from this whole mess. If you like Hank, then boy, this is the episode for you, because it is all Hank all the time. He is physically on screen pretty much every second of the episode, which means that nothing else really gets time to shine. Does Luann even succeed in putting his truck back together? Probably, I don't know, that could have been fun, but we don't get to see any of it. Bill and Boomhauer pretty much disappear to make room for Dale in the final act of the show, and the initial strong beginning with Bobby doesn't have a significant enough payoff, just this little quick testimony from him at the courthouse.
Objection, Your Honor. My dad doesn't use drugs. The only thing he needs to be happy is fishing. Sustained.
This is the kind of episode that I feel really could have benefited from just like an extra 5 minutes of screen time. I wouldn't want them to cut much, but it just feels like it's screaming to be let out to roam. Hell, this could have made for a crazy-ass 2-part episode. We could have gotten really deep into how Bobby reacts to seeing his dad nearly go to prison for 2 years, or dig more into Peggy's rattled view of Hank, or, you know, it would have been great is just let's see more of Dale's schemes to get us out of the situation. That would have been amazing. Okay, maybe that wouldn't have been enough to justify making an entire second episode, but this one just feels a little too big for its bra, you know? It's almost a perfect fit, there's just a little extra spilling over the side that really needs some care. Personally, I think they could have cut the scene where Hank and Bobby go to the lake together, where Bobby wants to know when the boring part happens. Sorry, Bobby, you're in the boring part right now. Ugh. That whole scene is like a good 30-ish seconds that could have gone elsewhere. We could have seen how Luann is doing, or we could have gotten a little bit of a bonding moment between Bobby and Peggy while they're waiting for Hank's arrival in court. And of course, the solution to this whole problem is filled with logical pitfalls, such as why Hank didn't get Layaway Ray to tell the court about the mountain man that is selling bait right around the corner from where Hank is buying the drugs, like he's right there. So yeah, I think this is a fine episode as a whole, but quickly falls apart where even a little bit of pressure is applied. It's a real just like, let's kick up our feet and enjoy the ride kind of experience. Let's not think about it, we're just here for funny little things to happen. There aren't many memorable jokes, but the animation crew's cinematic eye is really starting to show off its talent here with excellent perspective shots, background designs, and great fish anatomy. It's a good catch, but ultimately one that I would choose to throw back because it needs a little bit more time to grow. And speaking of growing, we are on the cusp of discussing one of my favorite size-related episodes. Actually, no, that is too specific. This next episode is just one of my favorites, flat out, probably somewhere in my top 10, really. I haven't actually watched it in a while, so I can't say how well it's aged in this era of fat shaming, but if you have the stomach for a bit of cutting commentary on the fashion world and the cruel realities of the rest of the world, then you are in for one hell of a ride.
Dad, a man took pictures of me.
What?
Ah, fuck, that is so good. I mean, that's the worst thing ever to hear, but it is, I always die at hearing that line, sheesh. Anyway, until then, we can say that this episode, titled Jumping Crack Bass, It's a Gas, 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 has indeed been reviewed to death. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.
But I was using them, quite successfully I might add, as fish bait.
Fish bait? Guilty.